Call to order a public hearing on the vacation of a portion of an alley in the subdivision of Block 6 in the 9th addition to Normal. That is a property off of North Vale Street between Mulberry and Locust Street. Please call the roll.
Mayor Coos.
Here?
Mr. Fritzen.
Here.
Mr. McBride.
Here.
Mrs. Cummings.
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz.
Here.
Mr. Preston.
Here.
Mr. McCarthy.
Here.
Is there anyone here wishing to speak on the vacation of a portion of an alley in the subdivision of Block 6 in the 9th addition to Normal? Is there anyone here wishing to speak on the vacation of a portion of an alley in the subdivision of Block 6 in the 9th addition to Normal? And I'm required to ask this 3 times. Is there anyone wishing to speak on the vacation of a portion of an alley in the subdivision of Block 6 in the 9th addition to Normal?
Move we adjourn.
Thank you.
Second.
Please call the roll.
Mr. Fritzen.
Aye.
Mr. McBride.
Aye.
Mrs. Cummings.
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz.
Aye.
Mr. Preston.
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Mayor Coos.
Aye. The public hearing is adjourned. Before we start the council meeting tonight, we have a proclamation to share with 2 exceptional young students, and we're going to do that right now. I'm going to go out front here. Wherever you guys want to be. Yes, sir. So I need Becca Nally and Lexi Showalter up here.
Hi, Lexi Showalter.
Lexi?
Hi, Becca Nally, nice to meet you.
Nice to meet you guys. So I think the resolution that I'm about to, or proclamation I'm about to present will tell the story. These are 2 pretty energized young entrepreneurs, and we are recognizing them tonight for some pretty exceptional work that they've done. Whereas Becca Nally and Lexi Showalter have been recognized by Millikan University, Illinois State University, and Pontiac Township High School for the Celebrating High School Innovators Award Program. And whereas test scores and grade point averages do not tell us every important thing about our students, and because motivation, creativity, and tenacity to innovate are essential to our society. And whereas Millikan University, Illinois State University, and Pontiac Township High School have created the awards program to recognize and celebrate those top students in the state of Illinois whose contributions are innovative, creative, or inspirational. And whereas it is important to our community, our state, our country, and our world to recognize innovation and to encourage innovation in our school systems. And whereas Becca Nally and Lexi Showalter have illustrated their enterprising and innovative approach to work through developing Cyber Citizen, which is a face-to-face education for senior citizens on smartphone communication and usage. And whereas Becca Nally and Lexi Showalter were selected as one of only 7 students throughout the state of Illinois, 2 out of 7, I guess, to receive this prestigious recognition. And whereas the town of Normal is proud to recognize Becca Nally and Lexi Showalter as outstanding contributors to the town of Normal. Therefore, I, Chris Coos, Mayor of the town of Normal, do hereby proclaim Becca Nally and Lexi Showalter are officially commended for their outstanding service in the field of innovation. And this proclamation is to be presented to them to serve as a reminder that through their perseverance and work ethic, they have made a valuable contribution to our community, our state, our country, and our world. So, congratulations. And we're going to bring up some of their mentors and helpers for a group picture too. And parents, of course.
Okay.
How am I?
Hold it. How's my hair?
I'll come over by George. He's a really nice guy.
Yeah.
I didn't realize you're such a shark cake. Sorry, I'm saying.
Three. Thank you.
Awesome.
Congratulations.
Thank you, Mayor.
Congratulations.
You can keep it. Just keep it. Keep it.
Call to order a meeting for the Normal Town Council for May 21st, 2018. Please call the roll.
Mayor Kus?
Here?
Mr. Fritzen?
Here.
Mr. McBride?
Here.
Mrs. Cummings?
Here.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Here.
Mr. Preston?
Here.
Mr. McCarthy?
Here.
We'll begin with the Pledge of Allegiance. I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all. We've had no request for public comment. We'll move right into the omnibus agenda. Items considered routine in nature and will be handled with one vote unless a council member would like to pull an item for discussion. I'd like to be excused from voting on any bills I may have incurred in my duties as mayor.
I would like to also be excused from any bills that I've incurred in my duties.
Thank you.
And I, too, would like to be excused from a bill that I have incurred.
Thank you. Motion for approval?
So moved.
And a second?
Second.
Thank you. Items considered on the omnibus agenda tonight are approval of the minutes of the regular meeting of May 7th, 2018, and approval of Town of Normal expenditures for payment as of May 16th, 2018. A resolution approving the final plat of the Normal Main Street Fire Station subdivision by expedited process and initiating a zoning map amendment from B1 General Business to S2 Public Lands and Institutions. A resolution conditionally and partially approving a final plat within 1 1/2 miles of corporate limits by expedited process at the AZ Barth property south of 203 North, 1500 East Road. An ordinance vacation a portion of an alley in the subdivision of Block 6 in the 9th addition to the Town of Normal. Please call the roll.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Cummings?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The omnibus agenda is approved. We have a couple of items of general orders tonight. Actually, one item. Resolution conditionally approving a preliminary planned unit development for the park, which is east of 201 McKnight Street.
Move approval.
Second.
This is a apartment complex that is being built near the
Starplex Center.
Starplex Theater Complex, about 185 bedroom units. Is that about right?
85 units.
80,
Mercy Davison's ready here to answer all of our questions.
all right.
They're looking at 85 units.
Can't,
Oh, 85 units?
Nope.
no, it's on,
Even red.
It's on. but-
it's on, but the volume's not up.
85 units. is what
85
she said.
units.
Oh, there we go.
85
units
units,
in
not
total.
85 bedrooms.
Correct.
All right.
More,
thank you.
more in the magnitude of about 275 to 280
Okay.
beds.
Are there questions for staff on this project? Ms. Lorenz?
Do either of you know, I know that it was not addressed, obviously, at the Planning Commission, but what's the market for this? Are they looking at?
They've been
student
upfront. I think they're going to
population, or-
initially target the student market.
Okay.
The floor plan does lend itself to, it's a townhome style unit, so you come in at main level and go down to a pair of bedrooms and up to a pair of bedrooms.
Okay.
Depending on the first phase goes, which are going to do about 5 of the 14 buildings in the first phase. If the market dictates and it takes off, they'll do phase 2 and 3 and 4. If it doesn't, then they'll probably reconsider and maybe do two-bedroom units and
Okay.
kind of just see how it goes.
And
So,
do
but
you
yes.
have a sense on the spectrum of, plain versus student luxury apartments? Where might this fall?
Well, it's new construction, so
Yeah.
it's going to be nice regardless. I don't know that it's going to be, I won't say over the top, but lodge type
Okay.
amenities, but,
Okay.
and again, it's got a nice, if you've seen the plan, obviously,
Mm-hmm.
it's kind of a O with a central park in the middle when it's
Yeah.
completely done, and then obviously it's access to the trail.
Okay, yeah.
But I think they're setting themselves up so that if the student market is there, that's great, and if not, then these units are going to kind of be desirable to families or young
Right.
couples and that kind of thing, so.
Okay, thank you.
Further questions on this item? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Cummings? Aye. Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. The item is approved. Item 7 is ordinance amending Section 8.1-9 Public Ways and Section 4.10 Liquor of the Code of Ordinances to create a pilot program for on-street cafe seating at 111 West North Street.
Move approval?
Thank you. Is there discussion and questions on this item? The applicant is here in the audience tonight if you have questions for him or questions for staff. Mr. McBride and then Mr. Fritzen.
Question for staff. I'm inclined to support this. I'm excited. I think it's good to see this sort of thing. It'll contribute certainly to the vitality of Uptown. But given that it's a pilot project, what determines success? Have we given much? I'm sure we've given some thought to that, but maybe you could speak to it a little bit.
Well, I'll invite Ms. Davison to come forward again and talk a little bit more about it, but I think there's going to be a number of factors that we will consider at the end of the summer, including complaints or problems that we're aware of and issues that may have been raised. So in the event that we want to move forward next year, we know what to address and how to make changes.
Certainly, the experience of the owner will be weighed in because for him, there's this investment in the infrastructure itself, which he'll be making this year if it's approved. But just the person hours it'll take to set it up and take it down and to service it, like to staff the business to be able to go outside. If it's not worth it for him, then I suspect he won't want to do it again. So I think we'll be looking for his opinion on it. I think there will be just an anecdotal amount of just eyeballing the traffic, seeing if it's being used, how it's being used. Other communities have done this, so it's actually becoming more common all the time, mostly in the last 3 or 4 years. And in every case that I've talked to, they've been successful enough, in the municipality's opinion, to continue it. So we'll probably continue to reach out to those communities and say, okay, how was year 2 for you? How was year 3? But it's still pretty early in some of those places.
And we could see this potentially spreading to other businesses uptown
Certainly,
if successful.
If this is successful and we come back to you and say, pilot year was a success, here's our recommendation for how to move forward, it would certainly include some sort of limit on the number of these that would be appropriate at all. And that is true in every community that we looked at. Some of them have a percentage where you can't lose more than 10% of the parking spaces in a block, or each block gets 1, or, there's all sorts of math formulas for it. And that's something that the business owners in Uptown would certainly be interested in hearing about. Naturally, the only concern we heard really was, well, it is a parking space, so we can give 1 up, but what about 2? What about 5? So that'd be a big part of the conversation.
Okay, thank you.
Mr. Fritzen.
Yeah, I guess, you're touching on some of the concerns I would have in that as you drive down Beaufort and North Street, it is fairly tight with parking there, and I have a safety concern, that, it's one thing if you have to swerve to miss something or you happen to swerve because you're distracted for whatever reason, hitting a parked car is not a great thing to do, but at least there's usually 2 insureds there, and I know that there's insurance involved in this as well for liabilities, but hitting an amenity where there might be people seated in a, I've been in communities, I haven't been in a community where they've done something like this, but I've been in communities where the sidewalks are constructed so that you can accommodate outdoor seating. It is very popular, and we enjoy it for certain, but I have a safety concern with it. And I guess the other concern I had was, once you do a pilot, you kind of let the cat out of the bag, and if it is successful on some levels, there may be aspects of it that we maybe have some problems with and not a good solution, and so now you have to resolve that. So I guess my thought was some of those concerns about percentage of parking places and things like that to give up. I would rather see us have a little more idea of where this may end up before we do a pilot and actually let people experience it, and then there's some kind of demand that maybe we determine later we can't justify. Or how do you determine if there's only one per block or two per block, but there are 4 businesses within the block that want something like that? How do we decide those things? So I guess I would rather see us, if we're going to consider this, consider those things up front rather than after the pilot. And this particular location is probably the ideal location in all of Uptown Normal to have something like this, based on the curve there going into the circle already. There's some protection from traffic there, and it is kind of at the end of the row, and so the impact is minimal, but it's like picking the ideal spot to do the pilot also makes me a little nervous that rather than picking another spot that maybe is a little less ideal in appearance and then seeing what happens there. So I don't know. I'm not inclined to support it. For several reasons. I mean, those reasons, and I just the whole parking issue Uptown Normal. Heard plenty about that over the last decade plus. So,
Further discussion on this?
Do you want me to say anything about
Mr.
safety
McCarthy?
or anything? Do you want me to mention the safety
Sure.
strategy? I mean, only because it's kind
Please
of a
do.
known
Please do.
thing. So the way the ordinance is written, the Public Works Director would need to sign off on the design, and one of the key issues there would be safety. And so in most communities, on the end of the parklet that is adjacent to the next parking space, you would put in a parking block. And so you would essentially, it's like putting in a curb, they can be pretty tall. So that would stop someone from pulling into park and literally just driving into the parklet. So then you've got the other side, which is adjacent to the driving lane. And our current thinking on this is that we could put in 2 or 3 parking blocks again along that. So they wouldn't be in the driving lane, but they'd be adjacent to the edge of the parklet. So, which then would be similar to having tables and chairs on the sidewalk next to the curb, where you've always got the opportunity that somebody is going to do something crazy and go up over a curb. But the speed limit in Uptown is 20, and there's already a lot of mid-block pedestrian crossing, and there's kind of a lot going on, so people tend to drive pretty slowly there, which is what we want. So we're thinking that parking block strategy should be fine. We'd also put those flexible bollard things that have the reflectors on them as a visual cue at the corner of the parklet, not to stop a car, but just to let you know, like, don't go past here, you'll hit this thing. So we have put some thought into the safety, and it's been done elsewhere, so that's probably the strategy we would go with. And then as far as other communities dealing with, what if you have 5 people that want to do this, but there's only 2 spaces available? It's typical that you would have a deadline to file, February 1, and staff would review the proposals, and it would depend on criteria you've established, like what is your traffic like, what kind of service are you going to provide, et cetera. But you would need some criteria set out. But that is not uncommon, that there's a limited number of these, and you can have more people applying than can have a space. And then sometimes the community even just picks the space on the block and says, this is where it's going to go because this is the best spot for a parklet to be, and it may not be directly in front of that business. So there's a bunch of strategies, but you're right. Currently, we have not hashed all that out.
Mr. McCarthy?
Thank you. You touched on most of my questions. A follow-up one, since this has become public, has anybody else come up and asked you guys about doing one of these?
Just
There
one
been-
other business that I talked to said that they would certainly be interested, presuming that this one will be successful. They felt certain it would be, so one other business has said they'd be interested in it.
Okay. So there are some interested early adopters out there.
Potentially, yeah.
Good, good. I'm glad to hear you guys are thinking about safety. So is this part of the, I assume part of the pilot too, of how best to go about? So I've enjoyed in different cities a few of these. The two that I've been had big, like really big planter kind of things in front of them, which took up a lot of space, but certainly gave us the comfort that a car would have to be coming pretty darn fast to get through those things. So-
Yeah, that's not uncommon. Sometimes they're anchored into the street itself.
Yeah.
Sometimes they're anchored into the parking block that you've installed. So there are multiple ways to. Most cases, though, these are in areas with slow-moving traffic, so that seems pretty important. You can't get much slower than 20 miles an hour, so we feel comfortable with it here.
So that's something you guys are looking at, or you've already decided about how you're going to do it, or? it's
Pretty
all-
much. The parking blocks seem to be a good strategy.
Okay.
Again, I mean, if you think about it, a parking block can basically be like a curb. It's
Yeah.
concrete, it's about the same height, so it would be serving essentially the same purpose.
Perfect, perfect. Well, I'm supportive. You've answered all my questions. The first thing is, how do we decide what success is? I think that's important that you're taking into the owner's investment going forward, and then safety, and then some system for how we do this if it becomes overwhelmingly interesting and successful for the businesses in Uptown. A lot of feedback this weekend from a street event indicating that our citizens want outside opportunities to be out there. So I think this is a great thing that we're at least trying it, whether it comes to full fruition or not. So thank you.
Further discussion? Please call the roll.
Mrs. Lorenz,
Aye.
Mr. Preston,
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy,
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen,
No.
Mr. McBride,
Aye.
Mrs. Cummings,
Aye.
Mayor Kus.
Aye. The motion is approved. That concludes our business tonight. Before adjournment, are there concerns or comments? I think I have one. Do you want to do this, Pam?
Sure.
Go right ahead. Pam's got a couple of comments. Yes.
No, I just wanted to commend the staff for their work recently in presenting our TIF extension proposal to the other taxing bodies that share in the real estate tax imposed in the town of Normal, and thank them for their support and consideration of that proposal, and hopefully the General Assembly follows through with appropriate action. But I think one takeaway for me after kind of a whirlwind of sitting in on other people's board meetings is that how well our community is represented in a lot of different venues in a lot of different ways, and we had a real quick consideration by the Bloomington Water Reclamation District. They of course play a small role as far as the real estate distribution, but they took care of business pretty swiftly. But I think they understand the benefits as well. They weren't doing it without consideration. Others delved into it a little more deeply and had a little more discussion, and there were some folks that did vote against the proposal. I think those that I would characterize those as more people who philosophically are opposed to the use of tax increment financing, for the most part, which is understandable. It's not without its detractors throughout the state, so that's nothing unusual locally. I really appreciate Unit 5 and Heartland Community College in sitting through a full board meeting for Heartland, and to get to hear some of what's going on at Heartland, kind of reinforces your belief in what's going on there, and that it's a well-run institution. They have their own issues with the state of Illinois, just like the rest of us do, and on the local level. And they've come a long way from their humble beginnings to what they have today, and we're looking to do the same thing with Uptown, to finish a project that had a fairly uncertain start to know where can this thing go and where can it take us, and appreciate their support in helping us get another 12 years to take it another step. But Ms. Reese and Andrew and Sally and Brian were at all those meetings as well, and Brian he's kind of a quiet guy over there at our meetings, but he got called on several times to present, and just wanted to share appreciation with all that they did, and helping to move that cause along.
I would point out that Mr. Fritzen joined every meeting to offer his support as well, and was very helpful in certain issues and addressing those issues. And when I do these kinds of things, and I think everybody would attest that after you do 5 meetings, you kind of got your rhythm, and it's like, well, now we're really ready to present here. But everything was over by then.
Thank you.
Teresa?
I do have one thing. Just wanted to take a moment to congratulate our Cultural Arts Department, because both the Children's Discovery Museum and the Normal Theater have been named 2 of Illinois' 200 great places. So that's exciting. They were selected by Statewide Architect Association of the American Institute of Architects, honoring built environments, and they're going to be receiving a plaque for each of those locations. And nominations, we understand, were weighed against criteria that they considered, including being publicly accessible, pedestrian-friendly, designed on a human scale, and provide vibrant public spaces, among other things. So that's wonderful news, and congratulations to Cultural Arts.
Great. Thank you. And before we get an adjournment, we have one more proclamation to do. This is Gene Brown's last meeting here at the town of Normal after many, many years of service. I think he timed this to asphalt season, if I'm not mistaken, so didn't have to go through another one of those. So I'm going to ask the council to join out front here while we give this proclamation. Why not? Come on up, Gene. I probably earlier should have asked for a motion to approve this proclamation.
So moved.
Second.
Here we go.
Here, you get it next to the mic.
Whereas Gene Brown was born and raised in the town of Normal. At a young age, he spent a lot of time swimming and recreating at nearby Fairview Park, and later learned the value of a strong work ethic during Central Illinois summers on construction jobs with a local contractor and under his dad Harold's tutelage. And whereas his work ethic, natural curiosity, and intellect led Mr. Brown to obtain his degree in civil engineering from the University of Illinois in 1985. And whereas Gene Brown returned to his hometown and began employment with the town of Normal on May 13th, 1985, and during his illustrious 33-year career with the town, he has held 4 positions, including Public Works Inspector from 1985 to 1988, Civil Engineer from 1988 to 2000, Construction Engineer from 2000 to 2002, and Town Engineer from 2002 to the present. Whereas Mr. Brown attended over 1,000 public meetings, no wonder you're retiring, including those of the Town Council, Planning Commission, Zoning Board, and Bike Ped Committee, serving under 3 city managers, 3 mayors, and 19 council members, and worked with literally hundreds of developers, engineers, architects, contractors, builders, utility companies, appraisers, attorneys, and realtors. And whereas as part of his official duties with the town of Normal, Mr. Brown designed, issued, reviewed, and inspected more than $300 million in public and private dollars, or private projects, including the Towanda, Vernon, Broadway College, and Virginia Avenue bridges, RAB, Northtown and Pipeline Roads, Ironwood Subdivision, Uptown Renewal, hundreds of stormwater, sanitary, sewer, water distribution, and street improvement projects, and numerous park developments. In particular, the design and construction of all phases
of our most notable public amenity, the Constitution Trail. And whereas Gene Brown has made a lasting contribution by establishing and coordinating policies and procedures designed to allow the town to comply with state, federal, and local environmental regulations, including the special flood hazard area and stream buffer ordinances, thereby protecting the town's interest in providing a high quality of life for citizens. And whereas he will be fondly remembered by his colleagues for his knack of thinking through complex problems clearly, formulating appropriate solutions, and holding his ground to defend his recommendations in a calm manner. And I will attest to holding your ground, Gene. Whereas he has always provided the highest level of customer service, going out of his way to be helpful and considerate to the needs of the public and the community. And whereas he has always been a great team member, exuding a positive and fun influence with his dry wit, kindness, and common sense approach to any project, and was instrumental in making Normal the jewel it is today, in no small part due to his dedication and professionalism. And whereas Mr. Brown has elected to retire May 31st, 2018, and whereas his leadership, guidance, and institutional knowledge of our town will be missed by town employees, local developers, local utility companies, and the general public. Gene Brown's service to his hometown of Normal has been exemplary and worthy of special recognition. Now therefore be it resolved by the President of the Board of Trustees of the Town of Normal, and on behalf of all the Normal residents and Town of Normal employees, that our collective and heartfelt congratulations be extended to Mr. Gene Brown for an exemplary career in public service, and that he be commended and forever appreciated for the many outstanding contributions that he has made to the Town of Normal in enhancing the quality of life for all Normal residents and visitors. Since we're semi-informal, could we have a roll call on that one? I'm not taking any discussion.
Mr. Preston.
Aye.
Mr. McCarthy.
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen.
That's your call.
Mr. Fritz?
Yes.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Mr. McBride.
Aye.
Mrs. Cummings. Mrs. Lorenz. Mayor Kus.
Aye. Gene, here's the real deal.
Hand him the mic.
It's all yours, Gene.
Well, just, this is a little out of my comfort zone. Usually I'm not at a loss of what to say, but just thank you to everyone, past staff, current staff, past mayors and city councils and everybody involved for the assistance and cooperation over the years. I said this morning, you know, some days the days seem long, but the years have seemed to have flown by, and I can't think of any bad things. Nothing comes to mind. Everything's been good, and like I said, need to thank everybody. Especially probably need to thank Dave Anderson, because he knew me as a kid and still allowed me to be employed by the Town of Normal.
That's great.
But thank you very much. I'm deeply blessed and fortunate. Thank you. Thanks, Scott. Appreciate
Sure,
it.
we can't get a stop sign at Broadway.
On your way out. On your way out.
Thank you.
Broadway.
Remember that comment?
Four stop
Holding
signs.
strong to
Yeah, right.
Yeah.
Thank you. Thank you, Chris.
Are there further comments or concerns?
The only thing I would add,
Yes.
Mayor, is As you mentioned, Gene is retiring May 31st, and there is a celebration of his career with the town, so that is going to be in the engineering department at One Uptown Circle on Thursday, the 31st at 2 o'clock.
After all these years, we finally got a place you could actually let people into, right?
And you're leaving already.
Motion for adjournment?
So moved.
Second. Please call the roll.
Mr. McCarthy?
Aye.
Mr. Fritzen?
Aye.
Mr. McBride?
Aye.
Mrs. Cummings?
Aye.
Mrs. Lorenz?
Aye.
Mr. Preston?
Aye.
Mayor Kus?
Aye. We are adjourned. Thank you.
Okey-dokey.
Hey, Cherry?